So thank you guys for coming. Welcome, welcome. I mean, it's nice to be among so many great minds, as you all are. Great minds, great supporters of the American dream, of what we can do in this amazing country. We've traveled all over the world. Just to give a little background, when he's got a great story of entrepreneurial existence, if you will, and his story starts very humble. But I just wanted to, before we go back, we just had the opportunity to travel to probably 50 different countries over the last few years, and there is no place like home. When you go to a country where you can't even speak, we were in one country and you say that we can't say anything about the government or we'll be arrested, and I'm thinking, oh my God, everybody'd be in jail if we were in that country here, because they can't speak about it, and there's such a freedom there. Even though what you say sometimes is asinine or people say things are ridiculous, at least we have the freedom to do that. I mean, it's a pretty incredible country, really, in all my travels. So we're here to talk a little bit about your journey to the entrepreneurial dream, which you've achieved very beautifully on the public eye, and went back and gave it all up on the show. Like Dave is wearing the shirt, and Homer's mom is wearing the shirt, the Underdog Barbecue shirt, which is, if you haven't seen the show, I think it's on Hulu, Amazon, and you can stream it. Very inspiring look. When Glenn had success, he decided, what if I gave it all up and started? Could I do it again? Because sometimes when you're successful, people will question that. How did you get successful? Oh, it was all luck. It was all luck. You got lucky. But when luck and opportunity collide, that's when success happens. And he made it a really exciting place. So I hope you get a chance to watch the show. But why don't you start a little bit about the grit that you overcame to find, because it wasn't handed to you. He laughs. He says, I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I was born with a wooden spoon, which was used a lot on you.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Maryland, and Brian is back there. He's from my university in
Towson?
In Towson, Maryland. And I grew up very humble beginnings. My mom, dad struggled with alcohol. We didn't have a real great upbringing, but I had failed 4th grade. I had a child in 8th grade when I was 14. I was dyslexic, so kind of got off to a start that was a little different than maybe your normal childhood. And but to that, I owe a lot of where I am today to kind of building some thicker skin early on. And so when I've looked at a lot of young people, and we support a group called Horatio Alger because it is about resilient young people that have used education as their way out of troubles. And so I started, I was the first in my family to go to college. And when I graduated, I decided to come out to California and see what it was all about. So a friend of mine and I drove out, and we got all the way to Long Beach and went to the Queen Mary, and we sat there on the stoop like, we can't go any farther. What do we do now? And I ended up down here for those that are local, in Corona del Mar. And I was sitting on the bench overlooking the Pacific Ocean there, and I was by myself, and I just became inspired. I started looking at the homes, and I started looking at these, beautiful cars and people, and I thought, I want this life. Like, what does it take to get this? And I saw a man in his yard, and he was trimming his roses, and I just walked up to him and I said, look, what did it take to get this home? And, I said, I know I can do it. What did it take? And the guy says to me, Senor, I'm the gardener. He said, but I think the man's in real estate. And I was like, I want to get into real estate, So my buddy wanted to go back to Maryland, and I told him, I said, I think I'm going to stay. And he's like shocked. What do you mean? And I said, well, I'm just going to try it out. And from then I got a job as a waiter, and I got a job as a loan officer at the same time, and I just started.
I think, there's a lot of stories in between. Excitingly, you can read about some of these stories as he has a book coming out. You can get it on Amazon now, pre-order, in May, called Integrity, with grit being highlighted and the main element of that story. But I think what you have always done, and one of the elements, I was talking to Seth about this too a little bit ago, about you know, when you were working along the way, you opened your own company, yet you were still a waiter. Like he was opened his own business. And any of you know, if you get into business, it's a hard thing to do. And you hit so many roadblocks and you want to give up. And he was able to, while he was opening his business, work in a restaurant as a waiter. So he was getting free food, finding any way to save money, like getting free food at the restaurant and making tips and opening a business and running it. But you kind of had a philosophy when you were growing that no job was ever beneath you. And I think that's an element that I think we see a lot of young people coming up, and younger than yourselves. You guys are obviously an exception to some of the what we see out in the world, but no job is beneath you. And when you get into a company, you do everything you take. There's no job that you shouldn't feel is beneath you and that you wouldn't do that anyone else would do. So I think that was one of the philosophies you live by.
Yeah, well, I did. I was a waiter around the corner here, and I learned how to do home loans. I did that for 10 months, and then I started my own company. And at the time, I didn't understand how much I really didn't know, you know, and they say ignorance is bliss, and it truly is, right? Because if I had known the pain I was going to be going through, I wouldn't have done it, right? You would have stopped and go, no way do I want to put myself through that much. And I think as an entrepreneur, and I think, Palmer, you hit on it, right? It's not all fun, man. It's not, you know, and there's been so many times when you're young that people come up to you and think, oh, daddy gave you that car and all this, and like you have no idea the sacrifices, right? And it's okay, you learn to live with that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of pain that goes through it. So yeah, I had my own company, and I just kept waiting tables because I figured if I went out on a Friday night, that cost me $100, but if I worked, I'd make $100, and you know, and so that'd be $200, you know, and so I did that for many, many years, and you know, I enjoyed the aspect of meeting people, and so I'd wait tables, I'd go to work in the day, and I owned the company, I had all these employees work for me, and then I'm waiting tables, which it wasn't so much about that, but to your point, I'm not afraid if, you know, I think there's so many people when I was young. You guys are such an exception again. And I've had so many of you come up to me and, you know, say hi and introduce yourself and, you know, ask a lot of questions. And that's, again, you know, I could have been the gardener. You could have asked me that, right? But point being, you ask. And that's so important. And so, you know, I figured when I got my start, that was what I was doing, is I was just getting involved, and you know, I just kept involved, you know, and what I was going to get to again was there were so many people that when I stepped away, I'm working every day, and I'd go back to Maryland and I'd look, and you know, they weren't working, and I'd say, well, why aren't you working? Well, you know, I don't have, you know, they just didn't have a job that was worthy of their time, and I said, get a job at McDonald's, like start as a, you know, at the front. Work your way to the cook, work your way up to the, you know, the assistant manager, and then if you can, you know, find something better, do it. I'm not going to work at McDonald's. So, you know, there's people that have felt they're just too good for things, and those are the kind of people that obviously get in their own way, right? And so, you know, I've always believed that, you know, it's, you know, you got to check your ego at the door and do what it takes to make it.
So talk about a couple of the principles of business I think that are probably the most important that you follow by. You have a few principles that are like non-negotiable, and I think that's been the key. I mean, we've been married 20 years this year, and I believe that as I've watched you over the year, these principles have been unwavering. Like you have been very strong about, and these are some of the principles that are in the show for those of you who are interested. It's a great lesson to watch the show, but you know, you keep your word. You know.
Well, I want to talk about that one for a second, because a lot of people, you can call it karma, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but when you, it doesn't have to be business, it can be life, but when you say something, you have to do it. It's the reality of life. And if you don't, you can look at it like, you know, there's a lot of people that have these dark clouds that follow them, right? No. They've done that to themselves, okay? And that's because you surround yourself with either the balcony people that are going to lift you up, or the basement people, right? The people that are going to pull you down. Hey, it's nice and freaking lonely down here, man. Stay with me down here. And so you've got to fight your way and stay with people that are winners, right? You got to surround yourself. You know when you're with the losers, right? You know it. And it feels good. Sometimes we want to be there. Let's go to Vegas with those guys and frickin', go gamble and
Be done.
and go find strippers, whatever you want to do, right? But the reality is that you got to surround yourself with the right people if you want to win, okay? And so, that's the thing. But when you give your word, there have been so many countless times that I realized, like, God, did he really remember that 2 years ago? And and then you go, hey, and you give them whatever, and they go, Glenn, what is this? Hey, remember I told you, 2 years ago, blah, 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 and here's this money, or here's this job, or here's this whatever. You didn't have to do that. I said, hey, I told you I would, right? And when that happens, maybe nothing happens, but years can go by. And then those people are the ones that catch you, right? Because they say, that person kept his word. And so when you plant those seeds in your life, and there's, again, in 2007 and 8, the world blew up, right? Financial world. And so many people I knew fell. So many people just couldn't make it. I had so many people come to me and help me and say, hey, let me, help you do this or help you with that. And I'd be like, what? Do you remember 5 years ago? Do you remember? And so I'm proud of the fact that I keep my word and that it comes back. It does, because people will remember that, or they remember when you screw them. And they'll just
then they'll
watch
seek
you.
revenge upon you.
Amen. That's right.
So, and you talk about the people in your life you surround yourself with, and I think that's a very strong, not only, and expanding on surrounding yourself with people, but even the competition you've kept close, even the people in your business. It is a competitive world. Business is very competitive, but actually keeping your competitors close is a very smart business move. And talk a little bit about that.
I will, but first we'll talk about the people that you surround yourself with, right? You look at Dave, great example, okay? George Argyros. Okay, there's some people in this community that are the pillars in this community, that are leaders and that set example, and they give their time, they give their money, they give their mentorship, right, to this community and to people. And those people, when I was young and I didn't know anybody, I was out there looking, like, who are the ones that are successful? And that word to me didn't mean they were rich. It meant that other people looked to them and respected them. It meant that, and then when those kind of things happen, yeah, money might follow and all these other things, but the community respected them, right? And again, I say you, Dave, because you're a great example of that. But I latched on back in the day, 20 years ago, to George Argyros, to General Lyon, to some people out there maybe you guys aren't that familiar with, but they were the original, the OGs, right, of Orange County. And I just would go, hey, do you have time for a lunch, right? Do you have time to I've got a couple questions. And never did I want money. Never did I want a loan, nothing like that. Just want to live by osmosis. Just I want to see how you deal with people, how you handle people. One quick story that has to do with that. We had, the first time we ever met Richard Branson, he'd come over to our home for dinner. And we had him, and we had a bunch of wine, and all this was real great, and he left. And it was about 1 a.m, and I walked into his car, and the car driver had...
the battery had died in the car.
Yeah, he gets out of the car, he goes, sir, I'm sorry, but I must have left the lights on, and, he was real nervous.
That guy was shaking.
And so here's Richard Branson, a little... Mr. Cool. Yeah, Mr. Cool, got a little buzz on, and I'm thinking, what's he like? Is he really that cool, or is he gonna be, is he gonna tick? Is he gonna just rip this guy a new one? Like, what's Mr. Cool like when he's angry, right? So I'm like, it's kind of like the Matrix. I'm like looking for any little sign of frustration. And the guy receives the information. You're screwed. You have to stay here a while. The car is dead. And he immediately turns to me and he goes, looks like we need another bottle of wine, right? Like, and I loved it, right? He didn't need to give that kid any hard time. The kid already felt bad, right? And so, when you look to people, you try to go, okay, what would I do, right? And I want to be more like that, And so examples of people that you look up to, you take the good. And there's a lot of people I've looked to it. You kind of go, all right, I don't want to be like that either, So, did I answer your question? I forgot the question.
I was going back to that night. Now, another thing, I was talking about the competition, keeping the competition close too.
Oh, yeah. So I've always had this mindset of abundance, right? You got to think about that when you're out there in business, scarcity, abundance. How do you feel, Are you like, it's the enemy? Sorry, Palmer. I don't agree with that one. All right, I take them and I bring them. Actually, you do too. AOC, okay, good example. Yeah, and but I do the same thing. I take a lot of my competitors and I bring them real close. Hey, let's work together. Hey, I'm not going to take your people. You don't take my people. And I know you do that too. But I think in the long run, it really works out well when you aren't in fear of your competitors, right? You realize you can learn a lot from people. And when you open your mind that way, you allow more in than, stopping a lot of people at the door. And it actually will work out, I think, better for everybody in the long run.
So as I don't, you have so many other anecdotes and ways of living that you have existed in success. I mean, this guy, going through grit, I'm sure all of you have a story. All of you have something in your past or your childhood or your family that maybe you're not so proud of, or maybe you felt really hard or felt really, wow, I got a bad hand. And with the organization we're part of, the Horatio Alger organization in particular, what we have found that people that have adversity, if you've had adversity in your life, if you had illness or trauma or abuse or neglect or any of that, it does not define your future. It is one of the stories in your book. And what's amazing about it, it becomes a trajectory for success, because you can either take it and be a victim and let it just change your life and hold you back, or you can take that story and become a victor because you survived, because you're still standing, you're still here, you're still doing. And that, I feel sorry for those that have not had adversity in their lives, because then they aren't equipped to deal with the world, because the world is not always going to be nice or friendly or equal or fair. And when we meet these kids who have been through the worst of the worst, abandonment, drugs, murder, death, pregnancy, abuse, gang violence, and you see these kids who've said, education is my ticket out of the cycle. And now that story projects them towards great success, because now you have a deeper compassion for your mankind, your colleague, the world in general, and that gives you an advantage. So if there are things that happen to you, thank that experience for being part of that story, because that now is only one chapter, and you are still writing that book, because that's not finished yet. So allow that to be one of the many great stories in your past. So you've had a few of those stories, and I've got a few of them coming in a book coming up in June.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I think, what you'll find, you guys, you're already so far ahead of the game by being involved, right? And I think that's the key to really a lot of success, is getting involved. It's that first step where a lot of people are afraid to, they think the other person needs to do it, or they think, you're not the one that's supposed to step up first. But why? Somebody has to step up, so why not you, right? And so by doing that at such an age, again, I had already graduated college and then came out and then kind of started my role a lot slower than you guys. So I applaud you for being there quicker. And but when you get involved and you start to realize that life is hard, right? And that things don't always go your way. And when you accept that, because what I've found is there's so many people that they want to plan something out. And half of these people that I've watched, they're in that planning mode for so long. It's kind of like the people in college that stay in college, right? Because you're afraid to go out there and face reality. Well, I mean, just go out there and do it, right? And in that planning phase, a lot of times you miss the opportunity because you're sitting in there so long doing it. So, you know, you need to go out and take risks, and take chances, and especially when you're young, then you've got a lot to learn, and you also have a lot of time. So, you know, you're going to fall a lot, and you're just going to get up and learn. And, you know, you don't probably, I was going to say have a lot to lose, meaning financial loss, but it doesn't really matter. And that was kind of the reason why I did that show, because a lot of times when we get older, you know, and you start to make some money, you start to pucker up, right? You start to go, oh, I'm not going to take a chance anymore. Like, I don't want to go backwards and lose everything that I built throughout my life. So you become more conservative as you get older. And I don't know that that's right. I think it's actually wrong. I think you should be able to continue to live and feel alive by taking chances and growing. And so I had so many people tell me, don't do that show because what's the upside, right? I mean, you're going to fail, but you're going to do it in front of the world. And you're all going to watch this. And I thought, like, and the other part that we forgot to mention is I just gone through cancer. And
That's why he coughs.
that's why I coughed, sorry. I had it, something in my throat. But anyway, and so what happens is, you know, I think again, we pucker up as we get older, but I thought, why, right? Like the best of my life when I look at it was when I fought, when I was in there grinding it out, when I was gathering the team together and going, we're going to figure this out together, let's do it. And so it's not the time that you just are fat and happy and you're breezing. It's the time you're collaborating and thinking and problem solving. That's the best times that there is. Believe it or not, you look back and you remember those times. You know, you don't remember just sitting on the beach, okay? And so I thought, I want to do it again. And that's what the cancer taught me, man. I'm like, shit, I feel like I could be dead, right? I was like sitting there and I was looking back on my life going, man, 2007 and 8, the time I thought I never wanted to relive, what'd I do to relive that one more time? But I think that when you do get older, what happens is, you know, if you can just forget about the fact of what age you are and go back at it again, where you guys are, you have that sense of pride again for building and for taking chances and risking and growing and bringing people together. So it doesn't matter how old you are. And that's what I learned through that show is I said, heck, I'm going to do it anyway. And what I'm most proud, because I'm really proud of what happened and the outcome of it, is that it was hard. And it was something I didn't think I'd get through. And I did, and it was successful. And I'm proud of it.
There's always going to be a time when you'll want to give up. Everyone was just like, this is so hard, it's not going to work out. And it's kind of like I was telling Seth there, it's kind of like when you're lifting weights, the only way you grow your muscles is if you pull one more rep, that last rep that you didn't think you could do. You're like, one more, you got one more in, you're just like, God, and how victorious do you feel when you get that one more? You run just another few hundred feet at the end of your exercise. And that's what business is too. There are days like, and the people that don't succeed are the ones that get, it's called, read the book, Think and Grow Rich. There's a great story in there, 3 feet from the gold. And if you just had gone 3 more feet, you would have hit the gold. Like, it's like, life is that way. You're always about 3 feet from the gold. And that is the hardest 3 feet in your life because the people that don't succeed give up. You've never given up. You don't give up anything, nothing.